Hi, Mom and Dad. I'm so excited for this conversation. I'm a sex, love, and relationship therapist of 30 years. Have written many books on the topic, and also am the host of a podcast called Language of Love, which is how I first met this beautiful human. And when I had Lindsay on the show about this book, I read, and my friends know this, I make it a point. I hate, as an author, going on shows and being interviewed by people who haven't read the book. And you would be shocked at how often that happens. I would say the majority of the time it happens. So I swore I was going to be an interviewer that always read the book, but I don't always read them excitingly. I often don't like them, but I've learned how to, I don't hate any book, but I've learned how to finesse it. But this book, and I told you this book I loved, not only as a reader, as her agent said, it goes down easy, right? Is those the words you use? And it does. It's an easy read. But as a therapist, I really, really loved it. And I think I told you this during our interview, Lindsay, that these are 250 questions that aren't like, what's your favorite color and what do you love about me? And, it's like really thoughtful, deep questions. And we're going to get into it, that not only help you discover who the other person is and how aligned you may or may not be with them, but also discover so much about yourself. So my favorite thing is when couples come to me and to my clinical practice before they get married, and we can get everybody on the same before, but now I refer people to this book. So let me just ask, how many people here are currently in a relationship? Raise your hands. Okay. And how many are single and ready to mingle? All right, great. Those were some very enthusiastic hands.
So wait, every time I meet a single person and I'm with my husband and they say they're single, I see my husband's eyes roll into the back of his head like, oh my God, she's going to try and set this person up. She's going to think of who she knows and who they can meet. So make sure you come talk to us
when
after.
you get your book signed, maybe she'll hook you up.
Let's do it. I love making matches. I love it.
Yeah, and that makes sense given this book. And one of the first things you said to me, and I thought this would be a great place to start, is that, this book is the book you really needed. And that's why you ultimately wrote it.
So I am the test case number one for this book. I mean, I walked down everybody else's aisle as they got married, literally wondering, where's my guy? Where is he? Why can't I find him? Is he out there? Is this ever going to happen? And some of you in this room who've known me for a really long time knew me at that time, knew my headspace, and knew that I really wanted to find love. But the thing was that I wasn't going about it in the right way. And so this story, so it's not just 250 questions. It is my transatlantic love story meets a system that I created for people to achieve healthy, lasting love. Because I realized once I found the person that I felt comfortable enough to be 100% myself with, that, well, first of all, before we were going to go the distance, we really needed to know everything and anything about each other. And I realized that I could use what helped us to help other people. And then wanted to write about it, then realized that it should be scientifically proven by experts like Dr. Laura over here, because there's nothing better than finding the right partner. If that's what you want for yourself, it helps your career, it helps your life, it helps your well-being. So I love love, and I realized that it's my mission to help other people find love in themselves, love with other people, and really to help them communicate better.
Yeah. And this is, what I love about this too, is that, because I've done some of this, I've been married over 20 years. It's not, there are questions in here that I never thought to ask my husband. And I also wish I asked him earlier. But no offense to him, he may be watching, but they weren't serious things. But there's some fascinating questions about pets. Like I didn't find out until 4 years in when I had to fight him tooth and nail for the dog that ultimately he loves almost more than me, but I had to fight him. But it's really relevant, I think, and this is what I love in romance books, that it's not just about, and everything that I write, I try to gear it towards singles if you're looking for love and wanting to call that in, and if you already have love and you want to take it to the next level, because to me it applies to both. Now, one of the things that you write about that I think is so powerful, and you touched on it, is that here you are, you meet this very sexy, attractive British man.
Yes.
And
Correct.
on your second date, his indefinite job ends.
So we were in New York, and we were set up, but it took us a while to meet. So we'd been talking with each other. We had a great first date. That almost didn't happen. It's another book. And then 30 minutes before our second date, he was told that his open-ended project that brought him to New York was closing. And it was this moment of, we like each other. There's something here. What are we gonna do about this? And we leaned in a weird way. We both leaned in. It was a bit unspoken at the time. And
but you said, and this I think is important for the book,
yes.
You said that because he was now going to be in the UK, a part of you kind of was like, this is never going to work. So instead, and I want you to speak to this, instead of doing what you had always done, which most of us do when we're looking for love, is we try to show up the way we think that person might want, right? So we're not always our most authentic self. You just let it all hang out.
Yeah, I mean, we leaned in, but also I thought there's no way this is going to happen. He lives in another country. I'm here. So I was 1000% myself because I could be, because it didn't matter, because there was no future. We're married with 2 kids. But there was something that liberated me into not being that person who was trying so hard. You're sitting across from someone on a date and you're thinking so hard, like, who do they want me to be? What do they want me to say? And I think when you start a relationship, being yourself is the best way to be, because then you can only be yourself as you go forward. And through these questions and being honest with someone, you realize who you are and what you need and what you also bring to a relationship.
Yeah. And you talked about how, and in the book you described this, how and I love this so much because you were so honest and authentic in your storytelling about how, there was this example of how you were if someone was making you dinner, you would have to bake homemade cookies, right? Or you would think about, like, you weren't really, and so even, I'm not saying you weren't your authentic self, because I'm not saying you were pretending.
I was trying so hard.
You were trying so hard.
I thought that I realized that I was enough, that I didn't need to show up to a date having baked cookies. I didn't have to show up having watched the basketball game of the team that this person enjoyed. I realized that the right person's going to see me for me, and I'm going to show up as me, and that's where it's going to happen.
Yeah.
And that was a really big life lesson. And the funny thing is, in my work, in my life outside of meeting a person, that's not who I was. I am that authentic, silly, fun, creative person, but I couldn't do it when I was looking for something. And I think it was the pressure that I felt, the societal pressure, the social pressure, the family pressure, the, oh my gosh, am I going to ever meet someone pressure? And what happens to you when you do that is you retreat. And then you show up on a date and you don't know what to ask because you're thinking so hard. So again, for those of you who are single, ask about pets, as Laura said. You find out how someone is as a caretaker without asking them, so how are you, as a caretaker? Do you want kids? Like, and if you want kids, how are you going to take care of them? And that's a little extreme for date number 1. But if you ask them about pets, suddenly they're talking to you about, I had this dog growing up and I loved him so much and it inspired me to get a dog now. Or I was bitten by a dog and I'm afraid of them. And suddenly you're having a deeper conversation than what restaurants do you like to go to, which is kind of interesting, but doesn't really go anywhere.
Yeah. And so there was this pivotal moment where you were talking to your now long distance boyfriend, and you
He
felt
was not my boyfriend.
Oh, he wasn't even your boyfriend
Not my
yet.
boyfriend yet.
Okay, you're a long distance situationship.
Correct.
But you were being your true self, and you were feeling like you were being so revelatory, you know. And
I thought I was sharing all this stuff with him.
Yeah.
And I said something, and I didn't know it was going to be this pivotal moment in our relationship. I don't even remember what I said, but his reaction on this FaceTime, I remember what I was wearing, where I was in my apartment. He said, "I just don't know you well enough yet." And I was like, what do you mean you don't know me well? I literally wanted to shout, I am opening myself up to you. Yeah. Like, hello. And you know what I would have done before that was I would have run. I would have been out of there.
Yeah.
And I just thought, you know what? Listen to him. He's telling me something. Maybe I should listen to him. And so instead of running, I quickly got off the FaceTime and I Googled, how do you get to know someone better? Because this book didn't exist, right? So, and it was in that moment that this idea of he wants to get to know me better. How do we do that? How do you just open yourself up to someone? Where's the guide? And it was that moment where I thought, okay, I'm going to do this, and we're going to create a list, and we're going to really figure out all the things we should know about each other, all the things that I guarantee you not every single person in this room knows about themselves or their partner.
Yeah.
So I brought it up to him, this British man who I had no idea if he was going to be receptive or open to this. And if you know my husband now, you would realize that, wow, he must have really liked you if he was willing to just open up in that instant and just go there. And he said he would go there with me. And
so you proposed it. You said, I'm going to come up with it, but you went all producer on him. She's a producer.
I'm a producer. And I just said, I thought about it for a bit. And I said, hey, you said something that really hurt my feelings. Not because you were intentionally trying to hurt my feelings, but because I like you a lot. And I would have run in the past, but I thought we could take it and try and learn you said you don't know me, so let's get to know each other. And we started the first time we did it was he came to New York and we went for brunch because you don't want it to be too serious, right? You want to just be somewhere where there's external things happening. And we started asking
if it's a guy, you want to sit side by side, not facing each other.
Yeah, you want to feed them some good food, coffee, whatever, make it not be so serious. And we just started talking. And I think he thought that this long chain of questioning would take a long time, so it would prolong the inevitable. But it was amazing. And then, we honed it, I honed it, and we started to help other people with it too.
So did he help you come up with some of the questions? Like, how did you think of the question? And we're going to get to some of the questions, but how did you think of the questions or come up with them? And they're in all different categories: religion, pets, aging, family, money,
sex. Hello. I didn't know you then, so I couldn't call you and say, what do we talk about? I started exactly with that. I started with the pillars. I started with, what are the big things that we need to talk about? And the cool thing is that what worked for us in terms of talking about different things at different times is not what would work for you, right? Yeah. You might talk about money first. I might talk about religion first. And there are so many different on-ramps in this book to teach you how to communicate with someone you care about so that it's not daunting. And a lot of times people read this and they think, how did I not even ask about that? Mm-hmm. Or I didn't know that was something you should talk about. And also, as you get further along in your relationship, whether you're in a long-term partnership, married, whatever your status is, as life gets busier, you forget to ask questions. Yeah. You're thinking about what you need to do for work or the day or your kids or your aging parents, whatever it may be. And you forget to look at the person right next to you, right in front of you, and say, let's talk about this, or let's do this ritual that connects us with each other. Rituals is a chapter in the book too, because that's what connects you with someone you care about when you are not entirely connected.
Well, I have. That's interesting you say that, because one of the things that comes up a lot with the couples I treat, especially when they've really drifted apart, kids, life, I always say that a relationship is like, I moved here from the Midwest, so it's like a long farm road in the Midwest, and eventually you just get really comfortable and you space out and take your hands off the wheel of the relationship, and the next thing you know, you're in the cornfields, right? And people come to me when they're in the cornfields, and what I'm trying to do is get them back on track, but also help them continue to. And one of the simplest things that is in every women's magazine is, make sure that it turns out that most couples, long-term couples, aren't talking more than 15 minutes a week about things other than the logistics of their lives. The things you're talking about, like the mother-in-law and the kids and the roof that's leaking and everything else. And so I'd say to them, all right, no technology, no other couples, no movie. You got to go and hang out with each other and talk. And they look at me like I've asked them to kill their firstborn child. And they literally say, what are we supposed to talk about?
Does watching Love Island on the sofa together count? Because that's something that we really like.
No, that's a great bonding activity, but that's not what I'm talking about, right? So what I used to do, and I still do sometimes, is give them like those table topics conversation. Like, if I had a superpower, what would it be? Like, we're desperate here. But this is even better, because the questions, and I want to get into this because you talk about this in your journey, and give a few examples, that you're not just asking your partner these questions, they require you to get really clear with yourself about what your answer is, right? So like, I'm thinking about the religion thing.
Sure.
I mean, maybe there's another example, but
no, religion's great. I think, a lot of times when you date someone who is similar to you, you think whether it's religion or you come from the same kind of financial background, you skip over things because you assume that you're similar. Versus, we grew up next door, so we knew each other's family growing up. So we actually don't need to talk about family dinners and what you want out of your family, because we both kind of did the same thing. That's not great. Because then suddenly you find you have a family and you both expect something different about family dinners when you could have talked about this way earlier. Religion is something really interesting, because I like to say that I learned more about my religion being with someone who was not my religion, because I realized that if I'm going to put an expectation on us as a family, I really want to understand my culture and my religion and my past and my feelings about certain holidays and certain rituals before I ask someone else to do that. So I'm actually really grateful to have had that difference. And I have to say, for us, the last thing that we talked about, the last big section, because I was afraid of it, was religion. And it turns out there was nothing to be afraid of. But for me, it was that scary uphill battle. But I dove in, and some of the questions in the religion section really helped me understand my thoughts on my faith and what I wanted out of a future. And people use the term red flags. Religion is one of those things where a lot of people have red flags, but I also learned in going through this process that a lot of us put red flags on ourselves so that we have a barrier to meeting or being with the kind of person that we really want or need to be with.
Right. So you might have written him off from the get-go for
Correct.
Not being, but what I remember discussing with you, and you write about this in the book, is that you had to, in order to even answer these questions or ask him to answer these questions and have this discussion, you had to get really clear about what religion means to you.
Sure.
What you really want. Why is it important? Right? Not because I've always said I'm going to marry someone and my parents always told me I need to marry someone from the same religion.
Right.
But like, why? What does it mean to me?
And it's not even things that are as concrete as religion. It's little things like, and if you're coupled up now, it's like, I expect my partner to be taking out the trash every night. I interviewed someone in this book. I interviewed nearly 100 people for this book, subject matter experts, celebrities, real people, to get, I'd like to say I was interesting enough to take an entire book and make it about me. I am not. But
Yes, you are.
I wanted to incorporate other people's stories in the book so that the reader would not feel alone when they're reading and identify with different things. But I interviewed this woman who, and I remember this interview so clearly. She was saying she expected her husband to take out the trash every night before bed. And literally when he did that, it made her want to have sex with him.
Yeah.
Right?
That makes total sense.
But there was a problem. There was a major problem. She didn't tell him that that was her expectation. So and after doing some digging, she realized that her dad took out the trash every night before bed. So it was this unspoken expectation that she had for how her family would run, but she hadn't communicated it. And this whole thing is about get it out there. Find someone you are so comfortable with. And if you're in a relationship where you're not always so comfortable with that person, start throwing out little things to understand them better. Start talking about what your needs are so that they can respond. Give them something to hold on to this so that they can show you that they're a part of that couple and that they are in it with you.
Yeah. And you'll learn new things. I think, for me, I with people looking for love and even wanting their partners to show up differently in love, I am passionate about trying to help people understand that it begins and ends, or at least it really begins with you. Like you have to get so clear. We are always going to attract in people that are at the same level of emotional awareness and health as we are. Always. So if you keep attracting in unavailable people or people who cheat on you or people who don't go the distance with you, that doesn't mean it's your fault, but it means there's something in you that is attracting that in and attracted to that.
But oftentimes people don't know how to address that.
Right. That's what we're saying. Exactly. That this allows you, it's a path of mutual discovery, but in that it requires you to also, should you choose to really go deep, discover yourself. Because I think a lot of the questions that you're talking about and how important it is to know upfront, most people don't think about asking. Like let's talk about some of the ones. Can you think? I mean,
I love the pick a number game.
All right, you do. You know your numbers better. Here's one.
So this is question number 10. And this is one that gets talked about a lot. So you actually landed on a really good one. It is, how do you fight? How do I fight? How do we fight? And how does that feel? And the reason why this is such a good question is because in my experience, and you can give us the clinical experience here too, in my experience, when you fight with someone, most of the time you fight about how you fight. So actually, if you understand how your partner argues before you argue, you can get all that BS out of the way. So for example, I like to just go for it. I like to think on my feet. I like to kind of work it out, as it's happening. I like to process. I like to process and just, I don't like the insecurity part of me doesn't like to let it breathe and let time go by, right? My husband is the exact opposite. He is a great ruminator. He's a finance guy. He likes to get his ducks in a row, and then he likes to come back and talk about it. Yeah. And that doesn't work. And it's so frustrating when one of you needs to retreat and one of you needs to go forward. So early on, we discovered that he lets me get a little bit of it out, and then I feel satisfied. He gets some time to get his ducks in a row, and then we can come back together and talk about it. And what this does is because we understand how the other one operates, we can give each other grace and not get angry with the other person's way. We know it's going to be like that, so we can focus on the issue that we're arguing about.
And you're guiding them through, because I think for a lot of people, if I were to say to you, okay, so make sure in the beginning of your relationship that you ask, how do I fight? How do I like to fight? How do I feel? Most people are like, I don't know. Like we don't think about it until we have something that butts up against what we want, right? We're more reactive than proactive.
But imagine if someone had the wherewithal to say, you know what? I'm really passive aggressive.
Yeah.
And I just need to get that out and just be a little bit passive aggressive for a minute, let it go, and then we can come back together.
Let me
I
just
feel
be
like I
snarky for
respect
a
you
minute.
so much more for that.
But what you're doing is guiding them through the process
Absolutely.
of discovering it so that they can have that conversation.
Well, and when you have that conversation, it makes you think about it. And then it makes you think about your family
Yes.
and how your family argued. And then it just starts a whole other discussion, because it takes you down different paths. And I mean, maybe not this question, but a lot of these questions, when you have a really clear, kind, open discussion with people, you're just having sex right after that, because it is just so nice to feel connected to the person that you're with. Sorry, my parents are watching. It's true.
She has sex, just so you know.
Twice. 2 kids. Twice. Thank you for that.
But it's true, the number one I did a national survey several years ago with Rand on what the most sexually satisfied women have in common. And orgasms are great when they happen, arousal, that's important. But the number one predictor of a woman's sexual satisfaction was the emotional closeness they felt to the person they were having sex with. That was the biggest predictor.
So basically, sex magic is romances and practicality.
Yes. There you go.
We solved it.
The 2 books had a baby. Now, speaking of which.
By having sex.
Yes, by having sex.
After a great conversation.
Yes. And that's the one I flipped over and I found that.
Oh, yeah. So do we have good sex? Is there anything you'd like me to do differently? So here's the thing. I believe that when you find someone you're really comfortable with, or you're in a relationship, which hopefully you're comfortable in, if you are able to talk about sex, that is huge, because it only gets harder to talk about if you don't talk about it early.
Yeah.
And that is something that, you really know if you found the right person, if you can talk to them about it.
Unless you're me, because I can talk to anyone about it. But your average
exception to the rule.
But your average person. In fact, my husband said that's when he realized he was in love with me, because I thought I was warning him off. I was like, listen, this was in the point. Now I do a lot of other things besides sex therapy, but I was deep into sex therapy, and I had television shows about it, radio. I was like all in it. And I said, you have to understand, I'm like 90% of my life is about sex. I talk about it. I'm writing about it.
But did you do it? No,
I did it.
Don't answer that.
Of course I did it. But I'm happy. I'm an open book, as you know. But he told me, I was trying to warn him, like, you've got to be okay with this, because hanging out with me, it's like it comes up all the time. And he told me later that that's when he realized that he was really into me. So it was
great. But
benefit.
I also find, by the way, about talking about sex, if you do it outside of the bedroom and you make it a lower pressure situation, you go for a walk, you're having dinner, there's something so high pressure about, hey, can we talk about sex when you're sitting in your bed? So have that conversation when you're going on a walk.
Don't do it while you're having sex.
Well,
the stakes are way too high.
Yeah, exactly. But people don't associate one with the other. They think if we want to have a talk about this, we have to do it at a very intimate moment. But if it's normalized in your relationship, like talking about money or your finances or a problem that you're having that you need help solving, if sex is just added to that list, then again, it takes the pressure off.
Yes. And you speak to this a lot, that if you've spoken about all these things early, that doesn't mean you're not able to change your mind, right? Your position can change after 10, 15 years, whatever, life happens, your views change. But if you have these conversations earlier, not only does it create a deeper sense of intimacy and self-awareness inside you, but you both are on the same page.
It's also easier to revisit something than to visit something for the first time when you're years in.
Yeah.
But a lot of you are years in. So you could still find ways of bringing all of these
answer these
up.
questions. Like, here's a good one. Are we satisfied with the quality and quantity of friends we currently have? Would we like to be more involved socially? Are we overwhelmed socially? And should we cut back on such commitments?
So this is one of those things that's a really interesting thing that evolves when you're in a relationship and you don't necessarily think to check in about, right? So it's your weekend, you're checking in about the week, you're checking in about maybe family, you're checking in about your plans, but no one really does an audit on their overall social calendar in terms of, do we need more time for ourselves? Do we need more time for our family?
Yeah.
And how will that affect our infrastructure and daily life? And having those check-ins, whether, again, about finances, about the food your family is eating, your social commitments, it all affects the equilibrium of your family and your couple and your partnership. And again, if you bring it up and it becomes a regular thing, it doesn't seem so daunting.
Absolutely. Well, I want to be sensitive to, we could keep going, but we've been talking for about 30 minutes. I want to see if anyone has any questions.
What kind of an audience do we have? Do we have a questions audience, Steve?
I don't know. If they don't, I'll just keep talking.
Yes.
But, you know, it can be about a friend, someone you know.
right there, Melissa Jensen, who I've known since we were 10.
Yes, now living, but that's okay.
But to me, you are always.
How do you find teaching of young women and girls as they're growing older to understand themselves enough to be able to present these as they're meeting people and getting older? How is it best, or what's your advice for like kind of really just having them understanding themselves, their beliefs and all that, and as they go on and like, you know, training kind of, or not training, but just, you know, teaching as much as you can to really know yourself before figuring out what you want in a relationship.
All right, I'm going to repeat the question just so, because we got the mics on. The question in summary is, how do you best teach young women and girls how to utilize this, not only so that they choose the right person, but their own self-awareness? Is that a good, quick summary?
So I'm going to give my answer, and then I would love for you to chime in as well. If they see you being the model, if you are asking questions, if you are showing your curiosity, uncertainty, interest in all of these things, and really speaking about it, not just to them, but they hear you talking about these kind of things in your family, in other people, understanding that conversation is not something to be afraid of, then it will give her the confidence to approach life and other people with respect and curiosity.
Yeah, amen to that. And I would just add to that, you know, I was thinking about this the other day. I'm going to age myself, but I don't care. I'm loud and proud and 57. 17 magazine. Oh,
I loved 17
magazine. That was like, some of you may know that. Most of you are too young. Yeah,
Loved
you know that.
it.
Okay. So what did we love besides the images and was the quizzes, right? So teen girls love quizzes. They love discovering what kind of, you know, girlfriend they'd be, what kind of person might they like, you know. That's essentially what this is. Like, I would give this to a tween girl.
There are so many questions in here that are really about your own self, right? And they make you think. And she will actually respond really nicely to some of these.
Yes. Yeah. And then maybe you can answer them together. You know, like say,
Actually,
this is
just
how I
me-
feel about it. I mean, I've done that with my sons, not with the book, but I've said, you know, I'm noticing that your girlfriend, when you asked her to scratch your back, said no. Like, you know, I didn't say that. But I invited a conversation about getting.
Someone wrote to me who had read the book and, you know, loved it, obviously, and said that she is using it as a family dinner exercise.
Yeah.
And they've actually kept it on the kitchen table, and they do a few questions at dinner, and she does it with her young son. She obviously censors the questions, but it's actually really nice for them to answer them as a family.
Yeah. You should make a deck. In the back of the book, all the I mean, they're written, they're much more explored in the book, but in the back she has all the questions just listed.
But you know, it's interesting. There are decks out there, but what this book is, that my agent's here and she can probably agree with me here. What this book has that other books don't is a beautiful love story and a beautiful, hard-earned story of two people who made a choice to be together and who started in different places in the world with different religions and different backgrounds, and chose each other and the journey that they went through to get there, as well as other people's stories, again, to make you not feel alone, because anyone can look at questions, but there's nothing that tells you how to go about feeling comfortable incorporating them into your relationship.
Yeah. Beautiful. Someone else I saw someone else's hand up. Okay.
Another camp friend. What is happening?
I've known Lindsay since she was shorter than
This
me.
is like the Lindsay show.
I could she's standing up.
8.
Can everyone see me?
Yes.
I had a question about, because I love the idea of the book, but I've gotten into trouble dating by asking too many questions.
Too soon.
From New York, Italian girl, we ask questions right off the bat about their family, and and it's mistaken for interest sometimes with guys. They'll think I'm really interested in them. I ask a lot of questions, and I'm not. It's just kind of our way of like communicating.
Yeah.
And it's not, but how to kind of ask them in more of a subtle way. And
So you're trying to ask less questions.
yes, I know.
Yeah. Well, I mean, there's two different things, and I'm going to let you answer,
No,
but I'm just
go-
going to
go for it.
summarize the question because I think there's two applications to this question. One that's specific to you is I tend to ask a lot of questions and accidentally, by virtue of that, communicate interest I don't have. So how do I pull back from questions? But also, I think a great addendum question is when and how to start asking these questions, because often the opposite starts to happen where you're asking the questions too soon and they feel like, whoa, you're
Bingo. I go,
So
Yeah.
I think I do know you, so this is a bit of a massaged answer. I would say that maybe you need to be a better listener.
Yeah.
Right? I mean, not to sound harsh, but if you're asking too many questions, my guess is you're not listening to the answer enough to take that into more of a conversation,
Yeah.
right? So instead of focusing on the next question, focus on the answer, because that will guide you into what there is next. Or maybe, why are you asking so many questions? Or is there something about you that's trying to get to an answer too soon and they feel that, right?
Yeah.
So take a deep breath, ask a question, and get into the answer more than focusing on what your next question
Yeah, I have a
is.
friend who said it's not an interview.
yeah.
It's not an interview.
My husband once accused me, which is true, and I think many people, I've trained myself out of this, but especially in an argument, but sometimes in conversation, is listening to respond, right? So often, like especially if you're in an argument in the past, I would be listening, and instead of really hearing what he was saying, I'd be thinking, I didn't fucking say that. I'm going to tell him that here's my argument back, right? Rather than really taking in what he's saying. So,
And that's where you can slow it down.
Yeah. Beautiful. Yes.
Something that you had said earlier reminded me of an interview that Julie Louis-Dreyfus did on our podcast of Anne Lamont, who's kind of a famous writer about being in recovery and also about writing.
Mhm.
And Louis-Dreyfus asked her why she chose to get married after a long bachelorettehood at age 69. And she said, well, it was not just this man, but actually how I got to know him.
Mm-hmm.
She met him and then, recognized there was something there, and then said, can we keep this at the soda fountain part of the relationship for a little while longer? Because she explained that she was in recovery, and she said, I don't want to be stoned on substance. And I recognize now that I also don't want to be stoned on love.
Mm-hmm.
That idea of like falling and crushing and getting out of your wisdom of a life well lived and wisdom earned. And so it sounds like maybe what happened with you and your husband is that you inadvertently were put into the soda fountain part of the courtship for a period of time to allow you to engage in curiosity about the person, as opposed to keeping, speeding along, getting stoned on love, whatever.
All right. Should I summarize the question?
Can you do
before-
that?
I don't know. Okay, so it was about, I won't tell the whole backstory because I won't tell it as well, but it was about Anne Lamott and her husband Neil, who are an amazing couple. I've interviewed them. And she was saying that because she had a history of addiction, she really wanted to move slow and create this, kind of stay at this beginning phase and not fall too quickly and deeply into love, because love stimulates the dopamine centers. It can be an addictive process, and you can get carried away by it, not only make the wrong decision, but end up kind of acting in unconscious ways. And the fact that your husband and you had this distance, and it went slower, and you entered this romance and practicalities period before you really committed. How was that your way of staying, as Anne Lamott said, also dating herself, by the way, at the soda fountain stage? Because in the 50s, those of you who weren't born until 1980, in the 50s, that's where people dated, at the soda fountain.
So I like to say that we got to know each other with 2 of our 5 senses. We saw each other and we heard each other. We couldn't just touch each other anytime we wanted to. And it was not by design. It was not intentional, obviously. But what it did for us was it gave us that extended period of time to learn about each other in other ways. And I really do stand behind that helping us and our love story. Again, we made the choice to get to know each other and to use that time to get to know each other better. Look, dopamine, it's called a dopamine hit for a reason. It is a drug. It cannot sustain you for your life. And otherwise, I imagine, the doctor here, you'd have a very short life because your heart would fail from all of the craziness.
Society wouldn't function.
Right? So
Yeah.
That's what I love, the dopamine hit of love, right? Love the dopamine hit of love. But the way to prolong that is to learn about each other so that you then take that stage and move it into the rest of your lives.
Yeah, I often recommend people, and they are like, but I honestly feel like if you want a monogamous relationship, and you want a long-term relationship, and you have met someone who you're really interested in, and especially if you're a heterosexual woman or you're someone involved with a man, no offense to the men, but they tend to want to move faster, and aren't always clear about their intentions. You say, I really don't have sex with anyone until I am clear that neither one of us want to be with anyone else for the foreseeable future. We don't have to be ready to walk down the aisle, right? But we have to really have gotten to know each other and feel like we really want. It doesn't mean we can't make out a little bit and see if there's chemistry, but you really want to get to know each other and see if there's really a connection on these other levels. And then when you really want to pursue that, then you have sex.
And then they say to you, wait, what?
Right. And so
then,
it's a great litmus
and they can
test.
say, well, how do you do that? And you can say, I've got 250 questions
There you go.
that we can ask each other.
And
then they run out the door.
Yeah. And then you haven't wasted your time, because someone who's really looking for a monogamous relationship and really is interested in that would be like, okay, like, let's see, And if they're not, then they're not the one for you. It weeds out a lot of the players.
And if they think you ask too many questions, then they're not the guy for you.
Yeah.
Any other questions?
Part of being upfront in who you are, right? Like,
For sure.
if
Yes.
you're showing who you are, the questions should come a little bit naturally, but it kind of gives us a guide.
But
Yes.
if you are hearing, for example, this is just one example, you ask too many questions, then you need to go back and why do I do that? And again, the doctor over here will probably validate this thought here, but that goes back to your childhood.
Yeah.
Why do you
Everything
do
goes
that?
back to your
Why do you
parents
do
growing
that?
up.
What situation made me feel like I always have to do that, and why? And is there a way to massage this so that I can just take a step back and that's not someone's response to this situation?
You're absolutely right. And I will give you one caveat. Sometimes he just doesn't like questions and he's the wrong. Like, I find that sometimes people say that as a defense. You've asked one question and they're like, you asked too many questions. So like, really ask yourself, am I asking a lot of questions? And yes, everything goes back to our childhood.
Yeah, I want to say I screen probably too much, because who am I to screen so much? But like screen guys who are find that too off-putting. And the thing that happens most is that too many people thought that there was interest there because I'm a talker. People who know me like a talker, and making conversations go perhaps too long, and people thinking that there was interest there that was more than friendly.
Yeah.
Because I was asking questions, which I thought was polite. Oh, tell me about your family.
Yeah, well, it's important to recognize that, right?
Yeah.
So your form of courtship is to hold back the questions until someone really deserves them.
Which I'm better at.
Yeah.
Any other, speaking of questions? Yes.
So in heterosexual relationships, a lot of the women tend to do a lot of this kind of work, the like initiating these questions and conversations. And I'm wondering how you are encouraging men to read your book and maybe start off some of those conversations a little more often.
Great question. Do you want to summarize?
Oh, yeah, thanks. I was like, oh, let's hear the answer. So the question was, since women are typically the talkers, the facilitators of the emotional exercises in the relationship, how are you, Lindsay, approaching this with men? How are you finding men's interest in being the initiator of these 250 fabulous questions?
Thank you. So let me take a step back, right? So this book can appeal to men, women. It doesn't matter who you date, what sex, gender, anything they are. But when you start with being single, when you're single, the way to use this is learn more about yourself, right? And then if you're starting to see someone, it's you're not going to bring this to date 1, 2, or 3 and be like, so I have a couple questions for you. Pick a number, right? This is a bit of a guide in your pocket to sort of say, you know what, I'm going to go into this date with 5 extra questions that are fun to me, so that if there's a lull in conversation or we're only talking about those standard things, I can use this, right? Then there's, as you get to know someone, if you're on a precipice to something big and there are things you need to talk about, right? That is something that if you want to iron out questions, again, whether you're a man or woman, you can jump in and use. To answer, well, if you've been together for a long time, again, there are things in here that people have not asked about each other. And if you scroll through and find one, depending on how your relationship goes, you can bring it up. You can bring it up over dinner. What I've noticed is that when someone brings up the exercise, it almost doesn't matter how you start, but couples get into it. And the man, in your case of your question, gets just as into it as the woman, even if it's the woman who said, can we do this activity? And then it's like, whoa, wait, let me pick a question. And if you feel as a woman that you need to initiate how this game goes, you can say, let's alternate. I'll pick a question, you pick a question. Or why don't I leave this with you and you can let me know where you want to go from this? A reader, messaged me actually just the other day and said, this has made a guy, we both like to talk about our feelings, and it made me feel so good to bring this to the woman that I am seeing, to show her that I want to get deeper with her in these questions. But the exercise speaks for itself. It's fun. It's sexy. Trust me, when you do this with a man and suddenly you're like, let's throw the book on the floor and have some sex, they're going to bring this book back to you.
In fact, guys, this is a great Valentine's Day present, especially if you want to get some nookie. Any other questions do we have? No.
So just one other thing. Sugar Paper LA gave us some really beautiful stationery. And as it is, yes, thank you, the week of Valentine's Day, please, I would love for you to write a note to yourself, to a loved one, to a friend. They're there for you to just jot down your thoughts. If you know this person's address, I know we don't always have everyone's address on hand, but address them and leave them, and they will be mailed tomorrow. And we all like to receive mail. That is not a bill.
Yeah.
So please, you
happen
can write as
nearly
many
enough.
notes as you'd like, but sometimes it's easier to communicate by writing words than speaking them. So if this gives you an opportunity just to tell someone that you care, we would love to facilitate that.
Amen. Well, thank you. And Lindsay, great job.
Thank you so much
Yeah.
for coming.
Thank you so much. So we're going to keep you both here. If we want to set up a line for anyone that wants to get it signed, get their book signed, we can do that. And then if you need to purchase, Hillary here can check you out. Thank you.
Mhm.